This is Finn Voices on the Healthcare Now Radio, where we highlight and amplify the voices at the forefront of health innovation that improves people's lives. Join us for an inside look at the changemakers driving conversation and answering the most important questions in healthcare today. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Beth Friedman, Senior Partner at Finn Partners, and I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. And my guest today is Jason Brown. He is the CEO of MRO. Jason, you and I first met last year at the AHIMA conference in Columbus, Ohio. And since then, we've chatted back and forth about one of the industry's, I'll say, most challenging and longest lasting issues. And that's that difficult relationship between payer and provider. I started my career, I'm almost embarrassed to say, back in the early 80s, and it was a challenge then. It's a challenge now. I know MRO has been involved in numerous collaborations with both providers and payers to improve the relationship using innovation and automation. So what I want to talk to you about today is what's working so far at your client sites, where you see the most promise to really resolve some of these issues. So welcome to the show.
No, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Let's start with something I just read about. So I just saw a Modern Healthcare survey. They survey revenue cycle companies every year. And this year's survey came out and it verified kind of what we've been discussing here, that hospitals, health systems, the one thing they most need from their vendor partners is really help with payer processes, right? So I know there's lots of them that cause a lot of angst, rework, duplication, just a lot of frustration. But can you kind of nail it down to maybe what are the top four most cumbersome for those hospitals and health systems to manage?
Yeah, great question. And I too have been in the healthcare technology industry for a while and have served both providers and payers and seen this problem from both sides of the aisle, if you will. And notwithstanding a lot of progress that has been made over the last several decades, this still is I'd say quite a thorny issue. And so top of mind, I think there are probably three or four big pain points that we as a healthcare system really need to think about how we address and solve. The first really is if you're a provider, getting reimbursement right and accurate and timely. There's probably no other industry that I can think of that you provide a service and then you wait 30, 60, 90 days to figure out how much you're going to get paid, if you're going to get paid at all. And so you got to think about just what that does to the system to provide a need and a service with no really good way of estimating time of payment, amount of payment, et cetera. So getting reimbursement right, I think, is got to be front and center. The second is prior auth, and you probably hear a lot about that in the news today. And from a provider's perspective, continuing to play this game of Mother May I, when they're closest to the patient and really have the most knowledge of the situation, is a frustrating, time-consuming, and highly administrative burden that's placed on the healthcare system. And I read a stat that I think it's 80 or 90% of prior auths are approved anyway. And so given that, like, why really kind of create that friction in the system? And it doesn't serve providers or payers well, because both of us have, standing armies trying to adjudicate that. So that'd be the second one. And then the third and fourth really is just around data sharing. And so I think about this from both sides of the aisle, right? If you're a provider today, you're getting asked to participate in all sorts of value-based care arrangements with your payers. And in order to be successful in those arrangements, you need data that the payers have. And so being able to share that data and consume that data is a big challenge and opportunity. But conversely, if you're a payer, McKinsey did a report that most of the margin that payers are making today is from government programs. So Medicare Advantage, Medicaid, ACA, and all that really hinges around risk adjustment and being HEDIS and STARS. And so clinical data from providers is the gas that makes that work. And so both parties need to be able to exchange data in a secure, compliant, high fidelity, low latency way for them to be successful in their business initiatives. And so that's kind of the third or fourth area that I think at the healthcare system we really need to address and change.
So I agree with you on those three, right? Reimbursement, we don't even know what we're going to get, right? Then the prior auth. I love how you said Mother May I. It's so true, right? That just resonated with me. And then the data exchange for that sharing of information back and forth. Let's focus on that one, because I think that's an area where you guys are really making some great strides. Clinical data exchange. I know interoperability is a part of that. Automation of processes is a part of that. So let's dive into that specifically. What are the needs here for the providers as it relates to that sharing, that information sharing with payers?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so if you think about this, demand for clinical data is exploding. It's high today, and it's growing rapidly for a lot of great reasons that we can talk about. But the burden, if you will, of providing clinical data out to other consumers of that clinical data is foisted on providers. It's their job to be able to do that. And if you think about it, providers are built to care for patients, reimburse, and research, not to be kind of data repositories and data exchange companies. And so if you think about the opportunity to help providers take data that now resides in various different systems, whether it's your EMR, your PACS, in some cases, file cabinets, and be able to take that data, digitize that data, normalize that data, and then make that data available for credentialed users who are licensed to consume that data, and give them only the minimal necessary data for that use case. So protect patient data. That's really a high stakes job that requires a sophisticated technology solution to be able to support that. And so that's really what we at MRO are laser focused on, is how do we make sure we get the right data to the right person in the right format on time, every time, to meet the use case of that particular situation, while continuing to make sure that we take the data governance, security, compliance, all those things that we have been bedrock for us over 20 years, and apply that to this new digital ecosystem.
So you're right. So there's always that balance, right? Everybody in healthcare wants to share and be interoperable and exchange, and that's all great. But on the back end, we still have all those regulatory and quality metrics that we're in healthcare, right? We've got to comply with it. And one of them I know comes out of the National Committee for Quality Assurance, the NCQA. And I know they have a summit coming up in October. I also know that you guys are very involved with them. So I'm just curious what MRO is doing with NCQA, what kind of rules, regs, guidelines, credentialing do they have as it relates to this exchange of information?
Yeah, great question. And so NCQA has a number of programs, but a few years ago, they launched the DAV certification program as a means to improve HEDIS data quality. And so we really saw this as a great program and opportunity for MRO to leverage our technology and capabilities in support of enhanced clinical data liquidity and enhanced clinical quality measurement. And so we're excited to participate in the program, and we've earned DAV status for 2 years in a row now as a validated data stream. And we've been able to do this across multiple EMRs, including Allscripts, Cerner, eClinicalWorks, Epic, et cetera. And we really see this as an important milestone. Not only it's helping further NCQA's vision of a digital quality measurement ecosystem, which we think is good, but it's a great example of payer-provider collaboration, reducing administrative burdens. And so specifically in this case, because our data streams are validated data flows, they are not subject to audit at the health plan level during HEDIS season, because we've already undergone the primary source verification. And what that does, it saves time and money across the aggregators, data aggregators, across providers, and across health plans. And so we see this as like a perfect example of where you can use technology in conjunction with standards from organizations like NCQA and create data liquidity that reduces friction and administrative burden out of the system. And so we're really excited to support that and proud to be one of the few DAV certified vendors out there because of our kind of technology capabilities.
It makes a lot of sense, especially as we're trying to solve some of these issues, right? Can we use, like you said, the combination of technology, certification, validation to take some steps out of the process? So it sounds like you guys have figured that out. That's exciting. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Obviously, to get that certification, you really had to have this expertise in clinical data exchange. It sounds like, I know MRO has been doing this for years. So what kind of volumes are we talking about? I mean, how many requests do the payers make? How much are the providers having to do with the payers? I mean, when you're not in it day to day, you have no clue, right? So I'm just trying to get my arms around what's that volume look like.
Yeah. So to your point, I mean, MRO, we've been at business 21 years. So we've been around a while and attacking this problem in different areas for some period of time. And over that time period, we've been able to develop a significant kind of scaled network. And so today we connect with over 200 EMR systems, either through our proprietary MRO Enterprise Connector technology or through APIs and FHIR standards. So that ability to extract data out across EMRs is kind of a core capability. And with that, we've got a network of over 120,000 providers, 35,000 practices, 900 hospitals, and nearly 200 health plans that are part of our network today on the payer provider side. And across this network, we are extracting tens of millions of medical records and hundreds of millions of curated clinical data elements each year. So we really are attacking this problem at scale across a myriad of different constituents, and really looking forward to growing our network and growing the volume and really being able to help exchange clinical data safely and securely, I might add.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We talked about that, right? Yeah. And I like the point you made earlier, Jason, because this is something that a lot of people forget. It's like making sure that we're sharing, exchanging, giving access to only the amount of information that's needed, not to the entire thing, right? Just for that use case that the payer needs or that's needed for an audit or a review or whatever.
And we think that's really critical because at MRO, we grew up serving providers, and providers continue to be our core constituent while we work with others across the ecosystem. And one of the things, if you're a provider, you're a custodian of that patient's health information. And we take that with the highest level of seriousness. And we want to make sure that when a provider entrusts us with their most precious resources, information, which is their patients, that we handle that with the utmost care. And we triple check. We've got all types of automation and human review to make sure that only the minimum viable necessary information goes out. And frankly, that none of that information can be used not only for purposes, maybe security breaches and others, but for audits and other things that people may try to claw back information. So we consider ourselves custodians of that information and really hold that as a sacred trust between us and our provider clients. And one of the things we know differentiates us from the other competitors who would love to have your data, but they can't quite keep it secure. So that's it. That's a great point.
And those are the ones that you see in the news, right?
That's right.
This company is getting fined and sued because they're using patient information in improper ways. So, or
they masquerade as like, "Hey, we're provider, we're here to help you," but really they're using it to claw back reimbursement. And so there's some nefarious players out there. That reminds me of what's the big bad wolf when it's kind of dressed like Granny, but just the fangs. It's like, well, you're not really here to help me. So we've just got that, multiple decades of really partnering with providers and making sure that that the data gets to the right place and it's the minimum necessary data.
You're listening to Fin Voices on Healthcare Now Radio. This is Beth Friedman, and my guest is Jason Brown, CEO of MRO. So Jason, you and I, our audience is going to think that all you and I do is go to conferences. We also met at the RISE National Conference earlier this year. It was in Colorado Springs, beautiful location. One of the keynote speakers was Christy Grimm. She is the Inspector General. And as we all know, when OIG speaks, healthcare listens. So I was very attentive during her session. And I caught a couple things that I want to ask you about. One of the things she mentioned was this crackdown on Medicare Advantage risk adjustment fraud and abuse. She said there was a lot of it. They're seeing a lot of issues with abuse in the Medicare Advantage program. So in order to tackle that, she mentioned that she predicts a lot more oversight by the OIG, more audits. I can only assume this means more chart reviews and more information is going to be needed by those payers. And I also know that there's sort of this season for these audits, the risk adjustment data validation, RADV audits. And I know that's coming up here in the first quarter or so of 24. So with sort of this maybe a potential surge in mind, how's MRO going to help? I know you have a product called Payer Exchange. How will that help the hospitals when they really get hit with more audits, potentially more audits next year?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And so as we think about it, there's, I'd say, a confluence of factors that are really lining up as we talk about this increasing demand for clinical data that I think providers are going to need help with. The first is exactly what you mentioned with what's going on with RADV and the OIG looking at that. And so there's going to be greater scrutiny on coding and documentation and potentially greater record request. And so that's one. The second is, since COVID, we have been operating in an elongated window to get records out to health plans. And so where there's the number is exactly right, but we've, several quarters longer to actually be able to submit those records to payers. That window this year, or 2024, is going to go back to the pre-COVID window, which is going to mean you're going to see higher volume within a shorter period of time. And that's going to stress provider resources to have to accommodate these turnaround times. And then the third is there is been changes to the risk adjustment, risk scoring methodology, as well as the star scoring methodology, and the MA risk model scoring changes and the changes in stars rating scoring could also drive further demand for clinical data from providers out to payers. And so as we think about that tsunami of volume requests now coming in a shorter period of time, you really need technology solutions to drive this. We all know there's labor shortages out there. Cost of labor is going up. So if you're a provider, you can't throw bodies at this. And this is really where our automation has come into play, because not only can we spike up with the technology to meet the demand, we can do that with faster turnaround times, again, in a highly secure manner, and really be the provider's partner to help them deal with that request and keep their payers happy and satisfied, make sure the payers are getting the information that they want in the right format and in the right time. And so it's another example of how we think we create solutions that serve both sides of the aisle and make that transfer of data seamless and secure so that the payers are getting what they need in the right format in the right time, and the providers are able to manage that request without having rising costs, without having to remove staff or change staff around to manage the peaks and valleys. And so we're really excited about our Payer Exchange solution and our other interoperability solutions that are really purpose-built for this coming wave of increased volume.
Yeah, so it sounds like too many records, not enough time, right? Or too many requests, I should say, not enough
That's
time.
Right.
And then also thinking about, I'm sure, it sounds like the payers have deadlines, right? They have to have this information in.
That is right.
By a certain time. So yeah, it's an interesting way that providers really have to help payers in this way, in this perspective. So cool. Let's go back. I started this segment by talking about something I read in Modern Healthcare, the survey. None of my radio shows this year have been complete without talking a little bit about AI, the two big letters this year and last year, I guess, too. But one of the things it said was AI is going to be more aggressively used to manage some of these processes with payers. As it relates to that, specifically the AI piece or RPA or ML, what specific use cases is MRO focused on as it relates to sort of these intelligent technologies? Anything that's on the horizon that you can share with us?
Yeah, no, it's top of mind for every company and every C-suite and every technology team is thinking about how you leverage AI. And so, if you think about from providers and hospitals continue to be under margin and cost pressure stemming from rising cost labor shortages and then just the pressures and squeezes and reimbursement. The good news is you think about the potential use cases for AI. It can help increase worker productivity. It can automate tasks that offset some of these labor shortages. And obviously you can use it to help identify reimbursement opportunities or kind of think about where plans may deny or different things that you can do to increase the likelihood of payment and timeliness of payment. So our view is that payers kind of broadly are going to start there with those low risk, moderate yield use cases that help them achieve these goals, specifically around some of these administrative areas initially. And then if you kind of zoom out 3-4 years, you're probably going to see more of the clinical use cases, predictive analytics, clinical decision support, and help with care recommendations. And so in the kind of macro level, I think that's where we'll start to see that AI adoption in healthcare, first on the administrative use cases, and then get some more of the clinical use cases. If you zoom in a little bit from an MRO perspective, the timing is good because we really are what we think is kind of purpose built to help reduce some of that, administrative burden. And so we see significant opportunities and have been using RPA as an instance for a couple of years now. And it's how we've automated a lot of the work that we do around clinical data exchange so that we can have that faster, higher quality clinical data exchange. Now we're looking at AI and LLM, large language models, to think about, as we're transmitting data, how do you start to add insights to that? And are there more ways that we can add different insights to our data or add different capabilities when we're transmitting to the other party that helps them on their end to ingest or utilize data? So we see significant opportunities in AI over the short term to continue to turbocharge what we've been doing with some of the RPA stuff, and now tap into more of the LLM, large language model opportunities, and continue to accelerate clinical data exchange at scale.
Really cool. Sort of like opening the envelope of some of that data that you're transferring back and forth, making sure it's accurate, correct, but then also if there's ways to apply technology and intelligence to maybe make some decisions about it, right? That's kind of cool. Yeah, very cool.
I think you've been in our Scrum team meetings with our CTO, because he always says, open the envelope.
Right, exactly.
So you can tell what's in there and then be able to make determinations. And so that's exactly right. And so how do you use some of the different AI capabilities to be able to do that?
Pretty exciting times. Hey, we've got about 4 more minutes left, a few more minutes. Any final thoughts before we close out today's show?
Yeah, I would just say, as we think about the opportunity with clinical data in the healthcare system, we really get excited about the impact that it can have on the overall healthcare ecosystem. For far too long as a system, we've been using claims data to make clinical decisions because it's what's available, not because it's the best fit data source for the job to be done. And so we see as our mission, like, how do you make that clinical data available at scale, on time, all the time, so that we can use the richness of the data that we frankly spent $30 billion of taxpayer money to put in these EMRs, now make it usable to drive better clinical outcomes and lower the administrative burden in healthcare. And so that's our mission. We're really excited about it. We've had a phenomenal amount of success over our 10-year, and we just look forward to continuing to help our providers and payers work better together and deliver better outcomes for patients and members.
We didn't talk about, so I know the old adage, garbage in, garbage out, right? We've known that forever, for over a century, I think. Data quality. I know that that's a big issue in healthcare. I mean, a lot of this data we're talking about, if it's not clean, if it's not accurate, maybe it's not as useful as we're thinking. Any thoughts on data quality and data integrity? Because that's something I always like to ask about as well.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And really, it's one of the things that we think differentiates us, is that ability to be able to not only aggregate data, but normalize data, create the usability within that data, as you say, bad data in, bad data out. And so our normalization, standardization capabilities to drive high quality, high fidelity data that our partners can rely on when they get it, is something that at MRO we pride ourselves on, and just something that we see as a really big opportunity across the healthcare industry. And so if you think about, we talked about AI a second ago, that's a really big opportunity that AI can help with and continue to drive that. But it also is a big need for these language models to be effective, is you got to have that good data coming in, and then you start to create that virtuous cycle, if you will. And so big opportunity, and something that we continue to be highly focused on.
Just curious, I know we talked about the NCQA earlier. Did they look at data quality? Is that part of that certification as well? Do they look at that?
100%, yeah. So it's primary source validated, our data quality. And that's really what the certification is that you've got, for lack of a better word, clean data coming through your pipes. And now they can kind of trust that data for NCQA. So that's 100% what it is. And when we saw that's like, hey, it fits all the right mission metrics, if you will, in terms of what we want to do, but it also placed our strength, being able to create or aggregate and then extract, aggregate, and then transmit high quality clinical data was right in our wheelhouse.
Super. Well, congratulations, Jason. Thank you so much for being on Fin Voices today and talking about the challenges between providers and payers, which I think we explored pretty well, and then these possible solutions, especially around information sharing and data exchange. Very exciting to see what's going on and hear about all the innovative things MRO is doing, not only to share that information, but maybe close some of those gaps, fix some of those processes, and making sure we're doing that in a high quality way, right? I think that's the message that I've got from this. So thanks for being on the show.
No, thank you guys for having me. Really excited. Thank you.
The easiest way to reach Jason is on LinkedIn, and you can learn more about MRO at their website, which is mrocorp.com. This has been Beth Friedman, Senior Partner at Fin Partners. I thank you for listening to Fin Voices on Healthcare Now Radio, where we talk about health information, health innovation, and all the technology in between. Until next time, wishing you all the best in health.
Fin Voices is brought to you by Fin Partners, a global marketing and communications agency working across industries and services. Whether inside our walls or on the front lines of health transformation, we stand together to create meaningful and measurable impact to the world around us. Learn more at finpartners.com and follow us on Twitter @FinPartners.